Cue the conversation.
Hello and welcome to the conversation. What's happening? I'm Paul Amadeus Lane, and that is
Bryson Foster. And Paul, we got a really exciting episode today. A great guest, my good friend, Mr. Chris Rosa. But we'll wait to get to him. Paul, what have you been up to lately? I know you've been a busy man the last couple weeks.
man. It's been crazy. Just celebrated my wedding anniversary with my amazing wife Ray. We've been together a very, very long time. You know, she is my caregiver. She is my executive producer. She's my agent. She does everything. So she and I got a great time. Had a great time of hanging out in Vegas, hanging out in Palm Desert. And if you haven't seen my social media, you saw me cutting up in there. But you know what, Bryson, I did good, man. You know, I've been on this healthy lifestyle journey. I'm down 48 pounds now. So when I started, I was 344, and now I am 396 pounds. So you know what that means? I can get a regular size quantum wheelchair. So I'm looking at that Edge 4 that I'm going to get, but I'm still going. My goal, Bryson, is to drop about 100 pounds, and then I want to try to get down close as I can to the 200. Just I did a DEXA scan, Bryson. You ever heard of DEXA scan?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Man, I look like Tweedledee and Tweedledum in my DEXA scan. I saw all like the visceral fats and everything, and that's one of the things that I'm trying to do now, Bryson, with our community is really talk about health and wellness. Because let's face it, we don't think about it that much being a part of the disabled community. We see food, we eat food, see food, eat food, see food, eat food. And Bryson, I got up to almost 400 pounds during the pandemic. And that was when some of the ones who used to work with Quantum reached out to me. They were like, "How much do you weigh?" They wanted to see if I can be even in an HD chair. But it's been going great. How about you, man? What's been up?
Well, Paul, you got a lot of great things going on. Congrats on your wedding anniversary. Congrats on losing weight. That's big time stuff. And I agree. Health and wellness is really a big thing. And I know I can't talk too much. I definitely struggle with that as well. But really proud of you and all that you're doing. Things have been going well out here in North Carolina. I actually, just like you did, got back from a vacation in Bryson City, North Carolina. And yes, I am named after Bryson City. Little fun fact there. It's a great little city in the mountains. That was a lot of fun. Got to eat at our favorite Italian restaurant, spent a day in Gatlinburg, which I had never been to Gatlinburg, so that was pretty cool. Could go down there, do some sightseeing. I've heard great things about it, so we had to go and try it. That was a trip for my dad who just turned 65, so definitely thankful to have had him for so long, and great to celebrate him anytime you can. So things are going good, Paul, and I'm really excited for today's episode. Like I said, I think this is really a big part of our lives. This cue the conversation. And also, this is something I look forward to every time. Every time I can put my mic on and get to talk with you, buddy, it's always great. So proud of everything that you're doing. Sounds like we're both got some R&R, much needed, I would say.
Tell me about it, man. It's been rough and tough, but I'm glad we got some rest and relaxation. But we back at it, right? We cue the conversation, we make it do what it does. And sorry about Joe Burrow too. I know it's been about 3 or 4 weeks since he's been out. But Bryson, I like Joey B. I really do.
I love me some Joe Burrow. That's the guy. I've been a Bengals fan since I was 8 or 9. So Carson Palmer was my first quarterback. So not just a Bengals fan because of him. Some people say you're a bandwagon. Nah, Joe Burrow is the guy. But you know what? That guy behind him, Jake Browning, he's been balling lately. Bengals are looking good even without Joey B. So yeah, it's been sad around here. I've been depressed, crying. But to be honest with you, Paul, I made a call up to the Bengals and said, hey. I got 2 toes that I don't use. If he needs one of mine, he can do it, but they said that wasn't possible, sadly, but Jake Browning's the man. We're still rolling, so
You know, I love that, Bryson. I want to ask you a couple of things. Well, one thing. Now, Bryson City, you're named after Bryson City.
yes, sir.
Was Bryson in Bryson City? Is that why?
Whoa,
Is that
whoa,
is that why is that why your name is Bryson?
whoa, Paul, whoa. I thought this was a family show. Come on now.
It is.
No,
I'm just
sir. No, sir.
okay.
My parents went up there for their anniversary one year, so it was an anniversary trip. But yeah, so and they found out a couple they went up there for anniversary trip and then found out about about a year or so later, that they were pregnant with me, and they said, "Wow, Bryson. Bryson's a really nice name." And so, that's kinda where it came from. But whoa, Paul, we got to keep PG-13 now. Come
Oh,
on, now, it's a family
it is,
show.
it is. Only Keith has his mind in the gutter, not us. For our wedding anniversary, Bryson, here's a pretty cool point. My wife and I didn't even realize this when we picked the date, September 21st. Which song does that remind you of, Bryson, by an old school R&B group? They they're named after the elements. Any stabs at it?
Sounds like you're trying to talk about some Earth, Wind, and Fire, my friend.
That's what it is. We had no idea that that was our wedding date when we picked our wedding date. It wasn't until like a few months before our wedding, one of my older sisters told me, "Do you remember the 21st night of September? We were dancing the night away." You know what, Bryce? So we gotta do a dance step like me and Keith did. So we gotta do that, okay?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we got you. We can throw it down. Come on now. We may be in wheelchairs, but tell you what, we got the best dance moves out there, in my opinion.
Before we bring our guest on, tell me what Chris means to you personally, Bryson, because I remember when we talked about having Chris on, you were like, he's like it. To me, I think of Chris of the Mount Rushmore of accessibility and disabled just advocates out there. I put Judy Human on there. I put Chris on there. Also put Lex Friedman on there. So tell us about your friendship with Chris.
Yeah, so I met Chris over a decade ago, through I worked with the Muscular Dystrophy Association. I was the National Goodwill Ambassador, and Chris was on the board of that organization for a long time. And got to meet Chris through a lot of those events. And he's always somebody that's been so kind to my family and to me. He's always somebody that I've looked up to. I think, Paul, there's a couple people, including yourself, that I look up to as somebody who, maybe at the time didn't understand how much it would influence that kind of handle the disability community. I think now as I've gotten older, I look to people like Chris who, have always been there for me and given my family, advice on health things and things like that. Just to see his impact that he's had makes me want to strive to be like him. So Chris has always been somebody that I could consider a really good friend. He actually helped me out a couple years ago when I was doing a feature writing assignment for one of my journalism classes. And so I got to interview him, and he's just somebody that's so remarkable. I mean, the amount of things that he does, that the amount of pots he's got his hands in. I mean, I don't know how he does it. It's really, we talk about the word inspiring, but even for me, it's something that's, hey, you know what? You don't need to limit yourself. And Chris is somebody that has proven that. He's making great strides in the disability community. He's made great strides and is continuing to make them. So Chris means a lot to me, and this is really great that we get to showcase somebody who's so genuine, also somebody who's really making a difference and, walks the walk and talks the talk. That's for sure.
Quantum Rehab isn't just about mobility, it's about possibility. It's time to rediscover mobility and freedom. At Quantum Rehab, we design cutting-edge power wheelchairs that don't just move you, they empower you. Our advanced technology adapts to your lifestyle, offering unparalleled comfort, precision, and customization. From smooth indoor maneuvering to rugged outdoor adventures, Quantum Rehab ensures you stay in control wherever life takes you. Looking for innovation? Our power wheelchairs feature eye-level technology, giving you the ability to rise up and interact at eye level. Perfect for work, social events, or just feeling on top of the world. With Quantum Rehab, the future moves with you. Visit us at quantumrehab.com and check us out on social media. Quantum, #1 for rehab power.
B Money, I think it's now time to bring on our very, very distinguished guest. I mean, I'm excited to talk with him when we kind of promoted him at the beginning of the show. I am stoked. So who do we have, Bryson?
Yeah, so he's actually a really good friend of mine. Just like you, Paul, he's a role model for me, somebody that I look up to a lot. We got Dr. Chris Rosa. He's the president of CEO of the Viscardi Center, which is a network of nonprofits that educate, employ, and empower children and adults with disabilities. They're doing a lot of exciting stuff there. He also serves as the president of the internationally renowned Henry Viscardi School. He's a staunch advocate for equity and economic justice, people with disabilities, and he has a form of muscular dystrophy. So we're in kind of the same family there. So without further ado, the doctor is in. We want to welcome on Mr. Chris Rosa. Chris, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Bryson. Hey, Paul, great to see you.
Hey,
And
Chris,
go
great
light
to
on
have
the
you.
go light on the doctor being in. I start to panic. I'm in sociology. People start to look for me for life-saving solutions, and I'm like, I might be able to help you with culture or institutions, but cardiac and pulmonary, you're on your own.
No, I appreciate that, Chris. And you know what? I still want to talk to you. You can help me out with some things I got going on. So we definitely appreciate having you. You know, Bryson has talked a lot about you and what you mean to him personally, and it's great to talk with you. And Bryson, let's make it happen, Captain. Let's get it going.
Yes, sir. So, Chris, just the easy one. I know I mentioned you have muscular dystrophy, but tell us about your diagnosis and what your disability is.
Sure, and it was a journey, as often it is with neuromuscular disability. And I'm 58, so I was first diagnosed with a form of muscular dystrophy in 1976, and at that point, MDA had been working on developing uh, the cause and effective treatments for neuromuscular diseases for only about 25 years. So when I was diagnosed in 1976, it was assumed that I had Duchenne muscular dystrophy, which is the most common childhood form, which the trajectory of it was daunting. It was a very significant diagnosis with very little insight into treatments at that point. But because of how well I did over the course of the next 10 years, my diagnosis was changed to Becker, MD. And I lived with that diagnosis for the next 20 or so years uh, until genetic testing had been refined for Becker. And thanks to the support of MDA, I went through it, and it turned out that I did not have Becker, which got me referred for a panel of other tests. And I finally arrived at the correct diagnosis of limb-girdle muscular dystrophy, which affects primarily the skeletal muscles, particularly around your limbs and your waist. So I've been using a wheelchair since I was 12, um, but because of the great support that we get in health preserving care through MDA and the support of independent living services that I've been able to benefit from, and the support of great family and friends, I've been able to live pretty independently. So I'm very
Wait,
grateful for that.
hey, Chris, can we go back for a minute when you talked about just your journey living with a disability and how you did not have the correct diagnosis? That must have been very frustrating when you found out what it was and what it wasn't, but also kind of exhilarating. Now you knew what you were dealing with. You mind
Uh,
sharing those emotions with us?
Now, Paul, I think that that's really insightful. I think early on, because so little was known in the 70s about the variety of neuromuscular diseases and the life trajectory of people who are living with neuromuscular diseases. The initial diagnosis was scary because it looked pretty bleak at that point. Um, but both aging out of that diagnosis, and then getting the correct diagnostic information really helped. Not only a great sigh of relief to know that um, it would probably not be as debilitating as we originally anticipated, but also understanding things like the genetic origins and who else in my family might be affected and who might be carriers of the gene that caused it. It spared people I love a lot of gut wrenching moral dilemmas and moral decisions about family planning that they would have. So um, I think that's the liberating part that you were referring to, Paul. That now that I know I have the correct diagnosis, I'm able to refine my approach to care and wellness through MDA Care Center that I'm affiliated with, and also I think understand, like the arc of my trajectory, and I expect to live a long and productive life. So I'm very grateful for that.
That definitely makes sense. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, so I think what's was really interesting, Chris, and we've talked about this before in many of our discussions, is kind of how the world has changed for people with disabilities. And I know for me, I mean, I was diagnosed in 2005, so I'm living in kind of a really great era for medicine and technology that's really helping us kind of find better ways to care for muscular dystrophy. How has the world changed in your eyes for people with disabilities? What are some maybe improvements or setbacks that you've seen as somebody who, was diagnosed in 1976 and, has been dealing with this longer than even I have?
Sure. Timing is everything, and I feel very blessed to have been born when I was, because I'm a first generation IDEA kid when it came to going to school, and a first generation ADA college student. And had I been born 5 years earlier, I think that my life chances would have been significantly diminished, surely as an occasion of timing. Because I was born in 1967, and I entered kindergarten the year that the IDEA, which right now this year is celebrating its 50th anniversary, right when it was passed. And I entered school at a time where, for the first time, parents had civil rights legislation that required that kids with disabilities be offered a free and appropriate education in the most inclusive setting. And my mom and dad were new to the disability experience, but the one thing that they were not new is expecting great things from their kids and absolutely demanding that their kids have the same experiences and opportunities of every other kid in the classes I took. And it was nothing more than a fierce loyalty and understanding, slowly but quickly, that they had this new law to lever at their disposal. They made sure that I was able to fully participate one way or the other in all aspects of educational life in K through 12. And it was, that vigilance on their part, coupled by this accident of history, with me being born in the right place at the right time, that really positioned me to reach my academic potential and positioned me to be a really good candidate for college. When I got to college, there were certainly rights and protections under Section 504 of the Rehab Act, and I had equal access and opportunity to all aspects of college life. But I went to school in the late 1980s, which was sort of the epicenter of that phase of the American disability rights movement, where grassroots communities of people with disabilities were funneling up their support to demand that this new bill, which would call for equal access and opportunity in all aspects of American life, which would ultimately become the Americans with Disabilities Act, um, got traction and ultimately was passed in 1990 um, through bipartisan support, both houses of Congress, both Democrats and Republicans, and President George Bush signed it into law. Um, and for all of us, that was a game changer. It made sure that students with disabilities had equal access and opportunity to education. It created some protections when it came to equal employment opportunity, giving us equal access and opportunity to places of public accommodation, transportation for the first time. And again, 5 years earlier, it would have been a struggle, struggle that is ongoing, by the way, but it would have been a profound struggle. And because I was born when I was born, I got to be part of the solution as opposed to railing only against the persistent and pernicious problems. And so I saw the world change before my eyes to be transformed to a more accessible and inclusive place. And, we're not there yet by any means, but the world was a much more accessible place over the arc of my 58 years. And in many respects, I rode that wave.
Chris, that's very fascinating. And I want to go back a little bit to something that you said about how right place, right time, being born right when the civil rights movement was really enacted and going into law. The elephant in the room, some believe that civil rights, the movement, the law should never be enacted. And then I look at us, who are part of this disabled community. I don't think they realize when they say that they are talking about us. So how can we educate ones out there when it comes to different laws that's been enacted, the ADA, there's certain type of things that we're all living through that when you're talking about doing away with some of these things, you're talking about hurting the disabled community that has members from all walks of life, different nationalities. Uh, we're not a monolith when it comes to being disabled. So how can we kind of navigate that narrative and do things effectively?
It's a really great question, and it's an ongoing challenge, I think, for all of us. I mean, I think part of one of the intrinsic strengths that we have is the fact that accessibility features are now such a ubiquitous uh, dimension of everybody's lived experiences, that when you demonstrate what a world would like without access to elevators, without curb cuts, without automatic doors, just in terms of the physical features. Um, when you ask people to imagine what the world would look like without those things and help them to make the connection that those things are only present in our lives because of the fact that people with disabilities are a class of people protected by civil rights law, by the Americans with Disabilities Act. I think at that moment, it demystifies it a little bit, and I think it makes it very tangible and very concrete in ways that people appreciate the leveling function that these things play, and the fact that it's present only because um, these enshrined features of our lived experience are because of a civil rights law. Um, and it certainly goes for the built environment, but when you ask people to think about the people with disabilities that they know, and how they've come to know them and the settings in which they've come to know them. Sometimes it's family members, and these are often people they cherish. And so the notion that those people's lives would be diminished by stripping away protections is something visceral that maybe gets them to think of it in a much more tangible way. But even for the friends that they've met in school or in the workplace or in the community, it's a good reminder to say, were it not for civil rights protections, we may never have met. Because absent those things, people like us would be lived separate and segregated lives apart from the mainstream of American life and community life. Um, and I think sometimes that's a very striking realization for what I still believe are, for the most part, good-hearted people who are having knee-jerk reactions to um, rhetoric. And for us, while the rhetoric, being part of that rhetoric and dialogue is certainly important, it's the substance of it which we're all striving for and fighting for.
So true. Thanks, Chris. Really appreciate that.
Oh, thank you, Paul.
And Chris, kind of moving on, from that, kind of building on that as well. You are the president and CEO of the Viscardi Center, and you all are doing some really important and also interesting work. So can you tell us a little bit about what you all do and why do you feel the need for this organization is so important?
Sure, and thank you for asking, Bryson. Um, so you articulated our mission very well at the top of our time together. That we're a network of nonprofit organizations whose mission is to educate, employ, and empower people with disabilities and their families across the life cycle. And so our organization exists because while we have important uh, legislative frameworks that make equal access and opportunity possible, it still takes entities that teach individuals with disabilities and their families about our disability rights legacy, about the rights and opportunities that are available to them because of that legacy, and how to leverage them so that they can fully participate in all aspects of American life. And where we build community around those ideas. And just to speak very specifically about it, in terms of youth, we're home to what is now, quite frankly, the world famous Henry Viscardi School, which is a school for kids with very significant physical disabilities and illnesses, who, in terms of their intellectual development, are typical. 90% of the graduates of our Henry Viscardi School go on to college and go on to build careers and lives of independence. Um, Experientially, the thing that's different about these kids is that they all have very significant underlying illnesses, and they need regular and frequent medical care. And one of the unique features of our model is that we offer a rigorous academic course of study, rich co-curricular activities, but we also have a medical suite on site, and kids who need ongoing medical care, including a lot of people with neuromuscular disabilities that we would know, Bryson. They receive that treatment and care um, in a way that's woven into the course of a traditional school day. So, a typical example is that um, one of our students, a high school student, might need a gastric feeding tube, and that's how they take breakfast and lunch. So outside of a place like ours, it might be a little daunting for them to have their needs met, even with all the appropriate supports in their district school. But here at the Henry Viscardi School, it's first period English, second period Spanish, third period a stopover at our medical suite to get some breakfast through their gastric tube, and then on to physical education in the next period. So they're able to weave that care seamlessly into the course of a traditional school day. So it's a really thrilling uh, thing to witness. I'm humbled by it each and every day, but that's the type of educational opportunity that we provide. Um, we also have, through our Abilities Incorporated nonprofit, we work on career readiness and career placement for people with disabilities who are talented, but are just having difficulty being connected to career pathways, partially because of ignorance among employers, partially because of the complexity of navigating that thorny journey for people with disabilities to achieve competitive employment and at the same time retain their eligibility for the disability benefits that they need, for example, to get the personal assistance services to get up and out of bed to go to work each and every day. So it's that kind of nuanced approach that we're able to provide these individuals to empower them to pursue the career of their dreams. Um, Another dimension of our work is our social enterprises. As I mentioned early on, we're very proud, as of October of this coming year, to be the new home for the National Museum of Disability History. And this is a museum that has a 23-year history. It had been had its home in Buffalo, New York, and it was a very elegant collection of artifacts about American disability history, which helped to tell the story about how Americans with disabilities have been an integral part of the arc of the American dream. And so through uh, during the pandemic, unfortunately, the museum was forced to close its doors, and they were struggling to reopen. At the Viscardi Center, we saw both the opportunity to bring a great resource like that here to Long Island, which is our home, um, uh, but also we're a place that already cherishes disability history and culture, and so we hope to be a destination for people with and without disabilities with a real passion and inclusive vision of uh, the arc of American history, and by bringing people with disabilities and their voices back in. So that just gives you kind of an overview of the different dimensions of our mission and the work that we do here.
That's incredible. That's incredible. I think for me, what's really interesting and something I kind of wrote about in grad school when I was doing my comprehensive exams was this idea of visibility. And when you look back at disability history, it's been a lot of people with disabilities fighting for that visibility. It sounds like y'all are doing that in a bunch of different aspects. So how do you feel that kind of your work with the Viscardi Center is fighting for that visibility and saying, hey, people with disabilities are out there in society and kind of breaking down those misconceptions that, hey, we can do things just like anybody else can.
Thank you, Bryson, for recognizing that. I mean, we feel as though we provide some really dynamic platforms to give people with disabilities the opportunity to tell their own story in their own authentic and distinctive voices. One of them is the museum, of course, and representing um, American history in its totality. And the only way that you can do that is to bring the voices and stories of Americans with disabilities back in. So we're really proud that we're doing that and maybe helping Americans and beyond to understand the critical role that people with disabilities have played in forging, um, you know, the 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 American vision, the American dream. Um, that's a humbling responsibility that we're very privileged to have. Regionally here, we are the uh, the stewards for a cherished resource, Able News, which is it's a disability news resource that focuses here in New York City and the larger metropolitan area. We have more than 10,000 subscribers, and we're looking to grow. We acquired the newspaper in the last 2 years. It was an old-fashioned paper and print newspaper, which was cool, don't get me wrong, but that format in and of itself made it inaccessible to entire segments of our own community who rely on assistive technology to access information and news. And it was a little bit of an anachronism. Like right now, leading edge news resources are dynamic and multimodal and digital. And so we converted to a digital platform. And now we're in the future, we're looking to do things that emulate what you and Paul are doing. That, you could get a great story about issues of critical importance to people with disabilities. And if you're interested in taking a deeper dive, you can follow a link that takes you to a great podcasts like this, which takes a deeper dive and maybe a much more dynamic and free flowing exploration of these ideas that are so seminal to the lived experiences of people with disabilities. So, offering platforms like those two, the museum and the newspaper, is part of our effort to educate people with disabilities themselves and the American public about the dimensions of the disability experience. And then the third thing that we do is by working like with a lot of using the football metaphor, blocking and tackling around giving people the tools that they need to empower themselves. They end up being brand ambassadors, certainly for the Viscardi Center, but I think for the American disability movement in general. And one person at a time, I'd like to believe that the people we work with are actively going out there and changing minds and hearts about the potential of people with disabilities and what the lived experience really is like. So in those three ways, I think we're moving the dial.
Chris, that's I really enjoy hearing you speak about just where we're at as far as the disabled community, but also your story, your journey, and especially some of the great work that's being done at the Viscardi Center. Chris, I hate to do this to you, but could we keep you over a little bit longer? We got to take a quick break, but there's some more things we really want to dive into. Like one of the things I want to find out is like the origin story behind the Viscardi Center and what made it come to fruition in the first place. So can we hold you over?
Oh, I'd be honored. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Bryson.
So do us a favor. If you can like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, however you watch or listen to these podcasts, share them, comment. We really appreciate it. It really helps the podcast to grow and help us spread the word as we cue the conversation.
Introducing the new Edge 4, the new and improved mid-wheel drive Group 3 complex rehab power wheelchair from Quantum Rehab. Uniting the best qualities of its predecessors with next-gen features, Edge 4 sets a new standard for mid-wheel drive excellence. The Edge 4 boasts 4 pole motors and 7-inch casters to help negotiate real-world obstacles. Switch-operated LED accent lights are integrated into the casters for increased light projection. The Edge 4 continues to improve upon Quantum's well-known independent smooth ride suspension. It comes available in 17 color choices, including 9 brand new Quantum colors. The newest addition to Quantum's successful Edge lineup, the Edge 4, is available now. Check it out at quantumrehab.com.
Chris, thank you so much for staying with us after the break. We didn't scare you away, so I'm so glad that you're still with us.
Oh, I couldn't wait to get back, Paul. And thank you, Bryson. It's such an honor for me to be here. I'm loving the conversation.
Chris, thank you so much. That means a lot from you.
Thank you.
In the beginning of the show, I put you on the Mount Rushmore of disability advocates. You know, you, Judy, and Lex. You know, you all have done some amazing things for our community. And when we left off, we started talking about the organization that you're a part of, president and CEO. Can you let us know the origin story behind the organization and how and what made you be a part of it?
Oh, for sure. And thank you for the kind words of getting me on a disability rights Mount Rushmore with luminaries like Judy and Lex. But it would be like Sesame Street. Which one does it belong? You know? And I respectfully, I'm grateful, but I'm probably not that guy. But the founder of the Viscardi Center most certainly is. Henry Viscardi is a really underappreciated American hero, and he's a precursor to the modern disability rights movement. He, like so many American heroes, is an immigrant, a first generation Italian American, born in 1912 with a congenital disability where he had underdeveloped lower limbs. In his own autobiography, he said he had stumps for legs. And because he was born to a poor immigrant family back at a time where there was no guarantee at all of access to health care in the United States, um, he was compelled for the first decade of his life to walk on his hands. And in the tenement building where he grew up, in East Harlem, in New York City, he was known derisively as the ape man because he walked on his hands. And I think that his experiences with derision because of his disability really stayed with him, and he devoted so much of his life to fighting for the dignity for people with disabilities, and indeed all people. Um, he was just a brilliant guy with an iron will who refused to be denied opportunities. And he just had a really winning persona. He was an incredible salesman, um, and people were drawn to him. In his early 20s, he met a doctor at the world famous Rusk Institute in New York City, who said, we could probably fashion some prosthetics for you that would allow you to be a little bit more mobile and independent. And he explained sheepishly that he and his family didn't have much money and that they could never afford it. And the doctor looked him in the eye and said, I'll tell you what, we'll provide it. And if you grow up and change the life of just one other person like yourself, we consider all things square and your tab paid in full. So he was very moved by that, but he really took it to heart. And I think that that seminal instance caused him to devote his life and take his talents to try to empower other people with disabilities. He was his high school valedictorian. But in those years, in the 1930s and early 40s, um, college was typically not considered a viable option for most people with significant disabilities. But again, with his winning personality, he went into sales, and he was just an overwhelmingly successful salesman. He could sell anything to anyone. And then in 1941, when the United States entered World War II, being patriotic, he wanted to serve his country in the way that he could, and realizing that he could not enlist, he joined the American Red Cross. And by, I believe, the hand of God, he ended up in the same room one time serving people with disabilities with First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt present. And she took one look at him and the work that he was doing and realized that he was a transformative leader and said, it would be great if you would work more directly with our boys, because then it was mostly boys, who were returning from conflict in World War II with disabilities and helping them transition to civilian life. So he was stationed at Walter Reed, the historic Walter Reed Hospital, where he worked with veterans with disabilities who were recovering from spinal cord injuries, lost limbs, and helping them with transition back to civilian life. And he was, like most things he did, uniformly successful, with one notable exception. In the 1940s, these people who were the quote unquote breadwinners for their families when they left, they were returning with disabilities and having doors slammed in their faces. Nobody wanted to hire veterans with disabilities or people with disabilities in general. They felt like, generally speaking, that there was no place for them in the workplace, in the American workforce. And he would not accept that. So he tried, and the doors were slammed at his face on behalf of the people for whom he tried to create these connections. He went back to Eleanor Roosevelt to get guidance and lament. She introduced him to Bernard Baruch, who was the Secretary of the Treasury then. And Bernard Baruch said, you know what, Henry, why don't you just build it yourself? Raise money and create an enterprise run by and for people with disabilities top to bottom. So on Long Island here, he went around to chambers of commerce, raised $38,000 in startup capital, bought a garage in West Hempstead, Long Island, and transformed that garage to a production floor, bid for military contracts for General Electric, Grumman, and all of the military production that was going on here on Long Island. And with those contracts, went out and recruited veterans with disabilities and civilians with disabilities to staff the first ever enterprise run exclusively by and for people with disabilities. In the first year, he paid back the $38,000 and turned a $50,000 profit. Within 5 years, they hired 300 employees with disabilities, top to bottom, from the CEO down to people on the shop floor. And they were grossing more than $1 million of sales every year. And so this guy was really a visionary and historic when it came to empowering people with disabilities, certainly in terms of rights, but also economic empowerment, and economic justice, giving them the tools to be able to do that for themselves. And that's really our legacy here. As he was going around to the highways and the byways, New York, in the New York region, he came across families with kids with disabilities who in the 1950s and 60s were sidelined because it was a good 15 years before the passage of the IDEA, which guaranteed kids a free and appropriate education in the most integrated setting in schools. And these kids were routinely excluded. And he saw that as intolerable. So he built what is now the world famous Henry Viscardi School, which for the first time provided a truly inclusive education for kids with disabilities. So those are the two pillars of the legacy that we uphold here each and every day at the Viscardi Center. And when we're doing our best work, we're doing it in this legacy and great spirit of Henry Viscardi Jr. So that's who our founder was, and that's really our legacy. And when we're doing our best work, we're doing it just like he did.
That's awesome. It's really, really great story to hear kind of all about what he was doing and kind of impact he was making. And Chris, that kind of leads me into the next question. You all at the Viscardi Center are, educating and employing, and you have a long history, I would say, in kind of the academic facet of society, because you were the assistant vice chancellor for student inclusion initiatives at the City University of New York. So how do you feel that kind of somebody who just graduated college, and you have worked there, how do you feel that maybe other colleges and institutions can make their campuses and academics more accessible for students with disabilities? Because you had a lot of really great programs that you helped launched at the City University of New York. So, kind of what do you feel like are the next steps as you all are kind of upholding those principles of education? What do you feel kind of the next steps are for education in general?
Sure, a good question. Because especially since the pandemic, higher ed institutions have really leaned into digital in terms of the way that we deliver instruction to students, both in terms of the content, whether you attend in present, you're attending in person or remotely. But most curriculum is delivered digitally through learning platforms or through the materials. So first and foremost, we need to make sure that our digital assets are accessible to all students, including students with disabilities. I'm proud of the work that we're doing here at the Viscardi Center. We have a social enterprise for digital accessibility services where we help higher ed institutions and uh, civic entities like counties, cities, entire states to make sure that their digital assets are accessible to users with disabilities to make sure that all learners have access, equal access to information, educational resources, and curricula. So as we look at the, education in the 21st century, that's going to be really critical. Um, and the other part is that in terms of making sure that students with disabilities at colleges and universities are retained belonging and the feeling that you belong is really important. That begins certainly with physical accessibility to the physical plant on campuses and the information that we just described, but making sure that students with disabilities have equal access to all aspects of co-curricular life, to participate in all aspects of student life, becomes really important to the sense that students with disabilities belong here and we're full and equal members of a campus and university community. And the other part is that we know when we've arrived and we fully belong when the curriculum starts to reflect our lived experiences as Americans with disabilities. And so more and more colleges and universities are featuring disability studies, courses, degrees, and programs where we study the American disability experience from the distinctive perspective of people with disabilities themselves. And when you're a student and you realize that you have equal access to the programs and curricula, that you have equal opportunity to participate in student life. And oh, by the way, when you look at the course offerings, there are courses that are taught both content and perspectively from your own distinctive experiences, you know you belong, you know you arrived, and you know you're poised for success. So I think that that's the formula for success going forward.
So that kind of goes back, I think, to kind of the thing we've talked about of visibility, of making sure people with disabilities are visible. And talking about that, it kind of leads into my next question for you pretty perfectly. So September is Muscular Dystrophy Awareness Month, and for both of us, two people who have different forms of MD, but both kind of go through the same battles. What does that mean to you to have a month that is just for visibility for people with MD, and how critical do you think that is in our modern society?
I do think it's important in terms of the politics of representation. Um, Having a month devoted singularly to understanding the lived experiences of people with neuromuscular disabilities, helping us to articulate our narratives of both collective struggle and individual and collective success is really important to understanding holistically what the lived experiences of people with muscular dystrophy and neuromuscular disabilities in general are. And obviously, cultivating awareness, empowerment among people with disabilities is a year round endeavor. But focusing all this energy and attention over a 30-day period really helps us to create a spike in awareness and attention and hopefully build some momentum that we could ride throughout the year in our consciousness raising activity. So, like you, I'm very proud to be a part of it and to have September as our platform.
I agree with that 100%.
Yeah, I do too. That's awesome. Awesome, awesome. How do you think that we're doing, Chris, as a whole, as a community, with the progress that we've made? And I'm sure there's stuff that we can do kind of different. What can we do to kind of help with the momentum that your organization and others are doing for us?
I mean, I think it is. I appreciate it. It's a really uh, powerful question because it it causes for us to look long and hard in the mirror and not to miss the opportunity to claim and celebrate our successes and our heroes like you did at the top of this segment by, the notion that we could identify a Mount Rushmore of our own in and of itself means that we recognize our own progress and that there were path-breaking leaders who helped to bring us to this moment. That being said, the job is unfinished. Despite the fact that we have 35 years of the ADA under our belts, for which we're grateful, we really haven't moved the dial on employment opportunity. 70% of Americans with disabilities are still jobless. And so there's still a lot of work for us to do. And for us at the Viscardi Center, particularly around education, which is readiness for employment, and then career readiness and career placement, we see ourselves as, making a dent in our own way. But I think all of us working together collectively, all of us who are toiling in our own ways, um, celebrating and linking together in galvanizing moments like the one that Bryson described in September, I think all helps to make a larger collective impact. And I think our commitment to that September year round ultimately will help us to win the day. And one way forward, which, if I might add, and I think you two would be extraordinary candidates for this effort, is I think that we won't really see progress in government to legislate policy that will truly empower Americans with disabilities until there are more folks who look like you sitting in Congress and in decision making responsibilities. I think once you become the decision makers, suddenly there will be a spike in interest and awareness and policy that really empowers Americans with disabilities to full citizenship as Americans. We're not there yet, but my money is on guys like you.
Appreciate that. And Chris, we got to have you back again. There's so much more we want to talk about.
I'd
Can
be
we get you back on again?
I would be honored. Thank you. And it's such fun. You have such great spirit. And it's a privilege to be here with you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Bryson, any closing words for your great friend, Chris?
Chris, thank you so much for coming on. You know, you like you heard earlier in the intro, really thankful to know you, and I think Paul and I are really blessed that you came on today. And I know that we'll have many more conversations. Just really thankful to kind of hear your insight. That's one thing I've always loved about talking with you is just how articulate you are. And how I tell you what, Paul, maybe you feel the same way. But after hearing kind of some of the things that your philosophy and kind of how we can move forward, I'm fired up. I'm ready to fight. I'm ready to go. So, but thank you, Chris, so much. Really appreciate it, and
Thank you.
thankful to know you and to call you a friend.
I feel the same. And just so you know, I would vote for each of you twice. Twice. Don't tell anyone, but twice.
I got you.
You are too kind, my friend. You are too kind.
Thank you.
Bryson, that was an amazing interview. I really, really appreciate that. And you out there, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share these, cue the conversations because it was amazing, Bryson.
It definitely was, definitely was. I think, you know, we've had such great guests, and I feel like I leave every episode learning something new, even as somebody who has a disability, like learning something new about our community and just kind of how there's so many great people out there that are leading the charge. And Chris is one of them. And getting to hear about the Viscardi Center, I've heard some really great things about that and been keeping up Chris for a while. So it was really great to kind of hear more about all that they're doing. And it's just it's so urgent and so critical kind of an organization like that that's fighting for employment, it's fighting for education, and really fighting for visibility in I think in my words.
So true, so true. So make sure you join us for the next episode of Cue the Conversation. I'm Paul Amadeus Land, and that is
Bryson Foster, and we will see you next time.
Cue the conversation.